Today we're going to talk about hiking with asthma. But first things first, you need to see your doctor and get an actual diagnosis of either asthma or exercise-induced asthma. For today's video, we're just going to talk about the exercise-induced asthma because that's the kind that I have and that I have experience in treating. I'm not a doctor, so I can't give you medical advice, obviously. I found 3 ways to treat my asthma on trail. I take a daily inhaler once in the morning and sometimes once at night if my asthma gets real bad. And I take a rescue inhaler when I need it or prior to a hike to help reduce the inflammation in my lungs before I even get started. I also take a daily medication called Singular that just helps overall with asthma symptoms. That's my trifecta of treating asthma on the trail. If you aren't an athlete that's already preconditioned, you may find yourself needing some stamina training and conditioning for the things you encounter on trail. I find that if I work out indoors where I can push myself a little bit harder, then I have more success outdoors. For example, I'll get on the treadmill and I will run or do inclines or something like that and push myself to about 75% of my max heart rate. Sustain that for quite a while, so I really challenge my muscles and challenge my lungs where I'm indoors and not breathing in pollutants or pollen or allergens of any sort that aggravate my asthma. You can use a Fitbit or another device to monitor your heart rate and make sure you're working in your target range. The most common method to find your working heart rate is to do 220 minus your age, and that is your maximum heart rate per minute. And then you work at 55 to 75% of that. That is the most commonly used method to assess your working heart rate. There are many others. You can Google it online, and there's actually a little bit of controversy on what the best way is to find your heart rate. That's a generally accepted method, so but do your own research, okay? Another thing I do is I'll wear my pack during those exercises. I will wear it on the elliptical or on the treadmill, or sometimes I'll even take the steps in my gym and set up a little obstacle course where I'm stepping up and down and over different heights, and I'll just make a little path through the gym, and I'll do that, and I do it for quite a while, like half an hour, sometimes an hour. So the people at the gym might think I'm crazy, but it definitely works for me. That method will simulate the way that your muscles work hiking out on trail. Simply working out in a gym does not actually give your body the proper muscle memory to do the activities correct, so wearing a pack indoors will help with that. If you're ready to hit the trail, as a preventative method, I use my inhaler, my rescue inhaler, half an hour to an hour prior to my workout. And then I do a really good warm-up at the trailhead where I do like leg swings and maybe some jumping jacks, some deep squats and some large arm circles, and just really get my blood flowing so that my muscles are not demanding that much out of my lungs when I first start out and I get warmed up. It's much, much easier to do it that way. If it's freezing cold, I also use a buff or a bandana to wrap up around my neck and even over my mouth to keep the really freezing air from getting into your lungs, because that will seriously aggravate your asthma. It's so awful. So I definitely always hike with one of those. Well, I hike with one anyway, but definitely in the winter conditions where you can get up in the elevations where it's really a lot colder than you expected it to be. It's also very important to fuel up. If you don't fuel your body properly, then your muscles get weaker and they demand more out of your lungs. I always eat a high carb meal the night before a big hike, and then more of a light, like breakfast, maybe some oatmeal for breakfast that day. And then I eat small snacks throughout the hike to keep that energy going. Eating a large meal can actually cause all your energy to go to digestion, and then you have less for your muscles, and it can demand more on your lungs. And for those of us with asthma, that's not a good thing. So how you fuel and when you fuel is definitely an important thing to keep in mind. If you do like to eat a larger meal on the trail, I suggest eating it towards the end of your hike, or if you're doing a summit hike, at the summit is probably fine because the way down generally is a lot easier and less demanding on your muscles. Probably the most important thing is to never hike without water. For those of us with asthma, you'll know that your throat gets super dry from breathing, like mine is now from talking even. And if you don't have any water, it just exacerbates the problem so much, especially if you're in dusty conditions or conditions with a lot of pollen. Definitely want to have your water with you at all times. Make sure you take a water filter so that you can filter from a nearby source if you run low on water. conditions that are hot and dry or cold and damp, maybe you have some pollen in the air that day, those things can all affect your asthma. So make sure you pay attention to those conditions and structure your hikes to where you're hiking in areas that are the least offensive to your asthma. For example, I do not hike well when it's dusty, not even a little bit. It's so hard for me to hike when it's dusty. So I generally avoid trails that are just completely barren of vegetation and things like that. I do hike those, but I use the bandana method to keep the dust out of my lungs, and I drink so much more water, not just because it's generally warmer, but just to keep my throat moistened because it's hard to breathe when your throat's so dry. So pay attention to your body and use the weather conditions to your advantage. The actual article that I wrote, plus more information at nowhikethis.com. Thanks for watching.